Have you ever wondered what truly makes an older man quietly magnetic? Not loud, not fast, not young, just the way he enters a room and people feel something, the way he pauses before answering and every word lands gently, or the way his silence isn't empty, but full of a life that's been deeply lived. You might think these details go unnoticed, but they don't. They speak. They stay. And today we'll uncover 7 quiet signs of timeless attraction, the kind that grows richer with age, not dimmer. So if you've ever doubted whether you still carry that spark, or if you're someone caring for an older loved one and wondering what still makes them shine, this story is for you. Before we begin, if any part of this video speaks to you, feel free to leave a comment below. Even just a word, it helps us know you're here, you're listening, and maybe you're remembering too. And if you feel this message might comfort someone you care about, you're warmly invited to subscribe and share. Now, let's step quietly into the first light. You might not have noticed it at first. It began with something as small as the way you stood by the kitchen sink. Your shoulders still remembered the weight of the years, holding grandchildren, lifting groceries, standing for those you loved. But lately, they've begun to lean forward just a little, not from pain, not from defeat, just the quiet tug of time. There's a man named Harold. He lives near the edge of a little town where the trees whisper like old friends. Every morning he walks out to his mailbox wearing the same brown cardigan he's had for years. It sags a bit now, just like his spine, but he still stands tall in his own way, feet planted, chin lifted, as if the wind itself might carry his dignity forward. Harold doesn't rush. He doesn't need to. He moves with the ease of someone who's made peace with his pace. And that, dear friend, is what people notice, even when they don't realize it. Good posture isn't about looking perfect. It's about presence, about the silent message we send when we enter a room or sit quietly by a window. The way we hold ourselves often says more than words ever could. Have you ever caught a glimpse of yourself in a mirror and paused, not to check your reflection, but because something in your stance felt unfamiliar? If so, you're not alone. Many of us, as the years settle gently onto our shoulders, begin to forget the posture we once carried through the world. But here's something worth remembering. That quiet strength, it's not lost. It's still there, under the layers of time and tenderness. And the beauty is, you can reconnect with it through the simplest of habits. Harold started leaving a sticky note near his teacup. Stand with your heart, not just your feet. Each morning before stepping outside, he'd pause, roll his shoulders gently back, breathe in, and let the sunlight hit his chest like a quiet promise. And the change was subtle, but real. Neighbors began to nod with more warmth. His daughter noticed he seemed lighter. Even the little dog next door ran to greet him again. That's the quiet magic of presence. It doesn't demand attention. It draws it softly. If you, dear friend, find yourself moving slower these days, know this. Your posture is not just a physical stance. It is a memory your body holds of all the days you stood up for others. And now perhaps it's time to stand gently for yourself. And if you're someone caring for a loved one, placing a hand on their back and saying, "You've carried so much. Let me walk with you today," can mean more than any treatment plan ever could. Even the smallest shift, the way you rise from a chair, the breath you take before walking, can carry with it the quiet beauty of a life still standing, with grace. And that is more attractive than words could ever describe. Sometimes it's not the silence in a room that you remember, but the way someone listens. Mr. Thomas lived just down the street from a small library. Retired now, he visited most afternoons, not to borrow books, but to sit quietly and chat with the librarian, Evelyn. He didn't talk much, but when he did, people leaned in. And when others spoke, he listened like it mattered. There's a kind of presence that can't be taught, only earned. And it begins with knowing that the most powerful conversations often don't come from words. but from the way we hold space for someone else to speak. Have you ever noticed how people seem to open up around you, even when you barely say a thing? That's not a coincidence, it's a gift. As we get older, our words may slow, but our stories grow deeper. Every wrinkle, every pause, every memory held in the soft corners of a sentence. It all adds a kind of richness younger hearts haven't yet earned. When Thomas's grandson came home one summer from college, he said something that stuck with me. Grandpa doesn't talk a lot, but when he does, I want to listen, like really listen. Because when an older man shares something, even just a short memory, a dry joke, a quiet reflection, it doesn't feel like information. It feels like inheritance. And yet, the real magic lies in what happens when that same man simply listens back. Not just nodding politely, but listening the way Thomas did, hands still, eyes warm, asking one thoughtful question, and letting silence do the rest. It's something younger men often miss, the quiet strength in not needing to dominate a conversation. In knowing that real connection isn't about how much you speak, but how deeply you hear. You don't need grand speeches. You don't need clever tricks. If you still make people feel seen, if your presence invites others to open their hearts, that is a kind of magnetism no mirror can measure. And it stays with people long after the conversation ends. If you've ever told a story that made someone laugh unexpectedly, or shared a quiet memory that made someone pause, even just for a beat, then you already know. You still have that spark. And if you're caring for a parent or grandparent, maybe what they need isn't advice or instruction, but a cup of tea and space to speak. Sometimes the most powerful way to say, "I love you," is to simply sit beside someone and ask, "What's something you've never told me before?" Let them tell it slowly. Let the silence be part of the story. And just listen, like Thomas did. Because in a world full of noise, a man who listens, really listens, is quietly unforgettable. There's a quiet kind of strength in movement, not the kind that breaks records, but the kind that lets you rise from a chair without struggle, step into your shoes without wobbling, and walk through your own front door with steady feet and a clear gaze. Mr. Elliot, who lives just beyond the edge of a sleepy park, has a routine that hasn't changed in years. Every morning after the kettle whistles and the first light touches his window pane, he stretches. Nothing grand, just a slow reach toward the ceiling, a gentle twist of the shoulders, a roll of the ankles on the soft rug by his bed. It takes him 4 minutes, but those 4 minutes have kept him standing tall at 83. He once said, "I don't move fast anymore, but I still move on purpose." And that perhaps is the difference between growing older and growing still. You might not think of walking across a room as something to be proud of, but when you can do it without hesitation, without holding the wall or bracing your hand against furniture, it says something loud without raising a voice. I'm still here. I still choose how I move through this world. There was a time when Elliot strained to lift his legs from the porch step. The first winter after his hip surgery, even tying his shoelaces felt like a mountain. But he didn't give in to the stillness. Instead, he started with small things. Standing during commercials, walking to the corner mailbox twice a day instead of once, brushing snow off the walkway himself, even if only a little at a time. And slowly, something changed. Not just in his body, but in his eyes. Because mobility isn't only about strength, it's about identity. When we move with confidence, no matter the pace, we feel capable. And when we feel capable, we start to believe we still belong in this world with purpose. Have you noticed, dear friend, how people light up around those who still move with grace? Not because of youth, but because of presence. Because there's something deeply inspiring about a man who shows up, fully and physically, in his own life. If your steps have become smaller lately, that's okay. What matters is that you keep stepping. And if you've felt yourself slowing, perhaps this is the moment to pause, not in defeat, but in listening. What is your body asking for? A stretch before breakfast? A walk after dinner? A dance with your grandchild in the kitchen, just for a moment? Even the smallest motion carries weight. Even the gentlest movement can ripple into a sense of freedom. And if you're supporting someone older, a father, a mother, a neighbor, you don't need to urge them to move faster. You can simply move with them. Hold their elbow not as a crutch, but as company. Because to walk, even slowly, is to say, I still trust this ground beneath me. And that kind of quiet confidence is beautiful to behold. In a quiet corner of Maplewood, there's a man named Arthur who always arrives at the cafe at exactly 8:15 a.m. Not because anyone's waiting, not because he has somewhere else to be, but because he still dresses for the day, like he's meeting someone important. Arthur wears a clean buttoned shirt, a soft wool vest, and leather shoes he polishes himself. His hair is combed neatly, not styled to impress, but out of respect. Respect for the day, respect for himself. There's something deeply moving about a man who still cares about how he shows up, even when the world stops noticing. Have you ever stood in front of your closet, hand hovering over a favorite shirt, and asked yourself, does it even matter anymore? The answer, dear friend, is yes. Not because of what others see, but because of how you feel when you see yourself. Taking care of your appearance in your later years isn't about chasing youth. It's about honoring the life that's brought you here. Every memory, every scar, every morning you still get to choose how you show up. Arthur once said, I may not be going anywhere fancy, but I still walk past mirrors. That gentle pride isn't vanity. It's a quiet defiance against the idea that time makes us less worthy of being seen. Whether it's a well-fitted jacket, a freshly shaved face, or just the habit of laying out your clothes the night before, these little choices become rituals of dignity. They whisper, I still belong in the world. I still take part. And people notice, even if they never say it out loud. The barista always remembers his order. The child at the next table points at his hat and smiles. Strangers open the door before he reaches it, not because of his clothes, but because of the way he carries them, with intention. And for those supporting someone older, a gentle gesture can go a long way. Washing their favorite sweater, helping them button a shirt that's gotten harder to reach, leaving out a dab of cologne they used to love but stopped using, simply because no one mentioned it. These aren't small things. They are gestures that say, you still matter, and I still see you. If you've ever put on a scarf that brought back a memory, or tied your shoes a little slower, but with the same care, you know exactly what this means. Dressing well in later life isn't about impressing others. It's about standing in your own light and deciding that you are still someone worth presenting with care, even on the quiet days, even when no one's watching, because that soft, unspoken pride is one of the most beautiful things a person can wear. At the edge of the garden, just behind the ivy-covered fence, there's an old wooden chair. It creaks when Mr. Bennett lowers himself into it, slowly, like a man who's learned that nothing good comes from rushing. He sits there most afternoons, hands resting gently on his knees, eyes following the wind as it dances through the trees. Not long ago, a neighbor stopped by, clearly agitated. His son had just lost his job, and emotions were running high. He spoke fast, pacing, sighing, spilling worries onto the ground like marbles scattered across the floor. Mr. Bennett didn't interrupt. He simply nodded, then asked, "Would you like some tea while you talk?" That's it. No lectures, no advice. Just the soft steadiness of someone who doesn't let storms pull them under. You see, emotional strength isn't about bottling things up. It's about holding space for yourself and for others without breaking. And as we grow older, we begin to understand that calm is not something we're born with. It's something we choose again and again. Have you ever found yourself reacting less than before? Not because you don't care, but because you've lived long enough to know which moments deserve your energy and which ones are simply passing weather. That wisdom is a quiet kind of magnetism. People feel it when they're near you. It makes them lean in, feel safer, breathe easier. Even in silence, you speak volumes. There's a grace in the way older hearts hold themselves. They've known love, loss, disappointment, hope. They've tasted life fully, and now they don't need to prove anything. That kind of emotional maturity is rare and deeply attractive. One evening, Bennett's granddaughter came over in tears. She'd argued with her mother, slammed the door, and came straight to him. He didn't ask for the details. He just offered her the seat beside him. They sat there in the quiet dusk, feet not quite touching, until she whispered, "How do you always stay so calm?" He chuckled softly, then said, "I wasn't always. But I've found that most things that feel huge in the moment look much smaller when you sleep on them." That moment stayed with her, not because he solved anything, but because he showed her a different way of being. If you, dear friend, still meet challenges with steady hands, if you breathe before you speak and forgive without needing to be asked, then you are already a lighthouse to someone, even if they haven't told you yet. And if you're caring for someone older, know this: their silence doesn't mean they have nothing to say. Sometimes it means they've already said it, just through the way they live. So sit beside them, ask without pressing, and watch how their calm slowly begins to steady your own. Because in a world full of loud opinions and quick tempers, a man who walks through his days with emotional grace is quietly unforgettable. There's something about laughter, the kind that sneaks up quietly, softens a room, and reminds everyone that we're still alive. Mrs. Eleanor lives in a house with windows that always smell faintly of old tea leaves and sun-dried curtains. She's 76 now, and arthritis has made her fingers a little slower, a little less sure. But every Friday, without fail, she hosts her afternoon club, which is really just two neighbors, a thermos of mint tea, and a collection of the silliest stories from decades past. Like the time her husband accidentally proposed with a napkin ring, or the day she mistook her daughter's hair straightener for a chocolate bar and tried to refrigerate it. These aren't grand tales, but when she tells them, with that twinkle in her eye and that gentle tilt of her voice, the room always fills with something warmer than the tea. You see, humor doesn't fade with time. It becomes something quieter, deeper, less about being funny, more about being fully present. Have you ever chuckled to yourself after remembering something from years ago? Something no one else might understand, but that still brings a smile to your face? That's the kind of humor that matters most. It doesn't need applause. It doesn't need to be clever. It just needs to be shared. And when it is, it bridges generations. Eleanor's grandson once sat through one of her Friday afternoons, earbuds in, clearly disengaged. But when she casually dropped a dry remark about how the internet never tastes as good as a mango, he looked up, smiled, took his earbuds out. He didn't laugh because it was a joke. He laughed because it was real, because she was real. That's the gift humor brings us as we grow older. Not noise, not attention, but connection. A lightness we carry, not because life has been easy, but because we've learned how to dance with its absurdity. If you still find joy in the small things, a badly folded newspaper, a mischievous squirrel on the fence, the way your toast always burns just on one side, then you haven't lost your charm, you've deepened it. And if you're someone caring for a loved one in their later years, perhaps the most healing thing you can do is laugh with them. Not at their stories, but within them. Invite them to share the funny moments, the embarrassing ones, the "you had to be there" memories. And when they do, don't analyze. Just listen, laugh, let it echo, because that sound, the soft, familiar rhythm of shared laughter, it's proof that even as our steps slow, our hearts can still leap. And sometimes the most unforgettable part of a person is how they made us feel. Lighter, even for a moment. If today still brings a smile to your lips, then you, dear friend, are still shining in the most beautiful way. Sometimes, it's not the years in your life that keep you vibrant, but the life still flickering inside your years. Mr. Langley is 84. Every morning he reads the newspaper with a yellow highlighter. Not because he wants to remember the news, but because he still wants to respond to it. Sometimes he underlines a story about a new invention. Other times it's a quote he wishes he'd said first. He still writes letters, still grows rosemary by the kitchen window, still tries a new soup recipe every Sunday. And last week he began learning to play harmonica, slowly with deep breaths and a smile that said, "Why not?" You might wonder, what keeps a man like that going? The answer isn't energy, it's not health, it's not even optimism really, it's curiosity. There's something magnetic about someone who still leans into life, even with wrinkles, even with slower steps. Someone who still says, "I wonder what would happen if," even after so many chapters already written. Have you ever felt that quiet pulse? That nudge in your chest when you see a painting, hear a song, smell something from a street vendor, and for a moment, something inside you stirs? That's not gone. It's just waiting to be called upon again. Passion, in its truest form, isn't about ambition. It's about attention. It's about waking up and still caring for the sound of birds, for the way light hits the floor in the hallway, for the neighbor's dog who always seems to recognize your voice before your footsteps. Mr. Langley once said, "If there's still something I want to learn, then the day has meaning." And that's what makes people lean toward him. Not because he's trying to impress, but because his presence reminds others that life, in all its stages, is still something we get to experience. If you're watching this now and you still have a pull inside you, a story you haven't told, a garden you want to plant, a song you used to sing, that means the spark is still very much alive. And if you're caring for someone older, perhaps one of the greatest gifts you can offer isn't help, but invitation. Do you still want to try? Would you like me to set up the paints again? Let's learn something together, just for fun. Because passion doesn't need an audience, it just needs breath. Even one small breath of wonder is enough to keep the light burning gently from within. And that light, that quiet, persistent flame, may be the most beautiful thing anyone will ever see in you. So here's to the morning you still want to greet, to the project you've been meaning to start, to the way your heart still leans forward, even if your body leans back. You haven't faded, you've deepened, and the world still needs that glow. A life message. Have you ever noticed how the sunlight near the end of the day feels softer, yet somehow sinks in deeper? Growing older is much the same. No longer dazzling, but warm enough to soften the soul, yours and those around you. You don't need to do anything grand to be remembered. Just the way you sit quietly by the porch, the way you listen patiently, fully, or the way your laughter gently rises when telling old stories. That alone is enough to remind someone that life is still beautiful. Your body may slow down, but your heart can always open wider. One small change, like stepping into the garden 3 minutes earlier each morning or writing down a memory you've carried for years, can turn an ordinary day into something quietly meaningful. If you still find yourself wanting to learn something new, if your heart still stirs when a grandchild smiles, if you still look forward to tomorrow just to brew another pot of tea, then that inner flame is still glowing, softly but steadily. And if you've ever wondered whether anyone still needs you, please remember, your quiet presence, your gentle truth, may be the light someone needs when they feel lost. Thank you for walking this journey with us until the very end. If this video helped you pause for a moment, reflect a little deeper, and smile just once, then we know without a doubt that you are still living deeply. And that, dear friend, is more precious than any words ever spoken.